it's not my job to, question the officials. I really like this, officiating crew. So it wasn't something that I know they did intentionally, but it's not fun getting hit in the head. I wouldn't agree with that. I just know, like, tonight it was a very physical game. I do know that on both sides. I kind of, I try to warn the refs every time I do get hit in the head. But if the flag is not called, then it's okay.
Since being drafted in 2011, no quarterback has taken more hits than former first overall pick Cam Newton. And while a lot of that can be attributed to his style of play, hard running style, end zone celebrations, and basically his overall demeanor on the field, it should not take away from the fact that all these accumulated hits have certainly taken a toll on his body. Even when he was released from Carolina and found a new home in Foxborough, the hits continue to pile up on his body, and along with injuries is one of the main reasons Cam has looked like a shell of his former MVP self in recent years. With the NFL's 2018 rule change targeting roughing the passer calls on quarterbacks, a lot of teams, coaches, players, and fans have all expressed their disdain on this new emphasis from around the league. And while the NFL's primary focus has been to keep the game clean and protect their stars from risking injuries, that hasn't always been the case for every quarterback.
I think it's easy to say it's probably the biggest pounding and punishment he has taken in his career.
And he's absolutely livid that was not roughing the passer.
Look, the game of football has changed drastically over the years, and what was then allowed back in the day is not even remotely close to what is happening today. Quarterbacks have been granted the freedom in the pocket that wasn't around in the 80s and 90s, and modern day statistics clearly show it. That being said, there was one particular game in 2016 where NFL officials clearly missed egregious hits after hits. The game in question would be the Week 1 rematch of Super Bowl 50 that saw the Denver Broncos host the Carolina Panthers in a game where opening ceremonies would see the reigning Super Bowl champions honored in front of the home crowd. And after only 7 months removed from the big game, this opening matchup was always going to be a chippy affair, to the point where Cam's post-game press conference and debates about how NFL officials failed to protect the Carolina QB dominated the headlines the next day.
Running back.
Going back to the 2015 NFL season, Panthers quarterback Cam Newton played at an MVP caliber level as he led his team to a league-best 15-1 record and cruised himself all the way to the Super Bowl. Unfortunately, the 6'5" quarterback came up against a Denver Broncos team that were led by their vaunted defense and went on their way to lift their third championship in franchise history with a 24-10 win. So fast forward to a couple months later when the league released the 2016 NFL schedule, and for the first time since 1970, a Super Bowl rematch kicked off the start of the season. Carolina came into this game wanting to exact revenge, so you can sure bet that every Broncos player had this date circled on their calendars. This was a nationally broadcasted event on Thursday Night Football, and with Peyton Manning retiring, all eyes were going to be on the former league MVP. The Panthers immediately got off to a fast start after their defense came up big, forcing a fumble on running back Devontae Booker in Carolina territory. From there, Cam led his offense down the field and connected with Calvin Benjamin for a 14-yard TD pass. Things were running smooth for Carolina. They were running the ball well, and Cam seemed to have an early connection with his number one receiver. The home team, on the other hand, under Trevor Siemian, continued to move the chains all the way to the red zone. However, a costly second turnover saw the Broncos' chances of getting on the scoreboard fade away. And it's here on the very next play where Cam Newton suffered his first blow to the head. Cam, while scrambling around the pocket, took a shot to the head after throwing the ball out of bounds, and you can hear Al Michaels' reaction upon Cam getting hit. After punting the ball back to Denver, fullback Andy Janovich got his team on the score sheet with a 28-yard TD run into the end zone. Carolina would answer back immediately with a 2-yard TD run from Cam, and in true Cam fashion, the QB celebrated the run with a signature celebration in the end zone in front of the home crowd. The Panthers would add another 3 points on a field goal right before the half, and going back to Cam, this is one of the reasons why Cam turns himself into the biggest target amongst the opposition. During that drive that set up for the field goal, Cam on 2 separate running plays was seen trash-talking TJ Ward and Darian Stewart. Anyways, this and his over-the-top end zone celebration probably rubbed the Broncos defense the wrong way, which turned it up a notch in the second half. In the middle of the third quarter, Cam would suffer his first sack of the game at the hands of DeMarcus Ware, and during the process took another shot to the helmet that again went uncalled by the officials. While at first glance, the shot to the helmet seemed rather innocuous, but upon instant replay, you could tell it was more severe as Newton had trouble getting up and was seen clutching his head in obvious pain. And as the punting unit came on, television cameras panned to the sidelines where viewers saw Cam lying face down on the turf, clearly shaken up from the last play. After a scoreless third quarter, the home team pulled one back early in the fourth after a 25-yard TD run from CJ Anderson on a screen pass. Carolina on their next drive would turn the ball over after Cam's pass was deflected up in the air for an interception. This set up the Broncos offense in good field position, and they would take the lead for the first time in the game after a 1-yard TD run from CJ Anderson for his second score of the game, giving Denver a 21-17 lead. The Panthers would come back and score a field goal to now trail by 1 with just a little over 4 minutes left in the game. Their defense did a good job holding the Broncos offense to a 3-0, and this gave Cam a real opportunity to retake the lead. Now, this is when things would begin to take a turn for the worse for the Panthers QB. After a 5-yard penalty for a false start, Cam took a sack for a loss of 5 yards. On the very next play, Newton ran the ball to the sidelines before lowering his head and taking a huge hit on the helmet from Bradley Roby. This was then followed up by another sack from Von Miller, putting the Panthers offense at 4th and 21. It would take a Chris Harris penalty for illegal use of hands to give Carolina a fresh set of downs. And then finally came the most bone-crushing hit to the helmet a few plays later on 2nd and 10 when Newton scrambled out of the pocket to his left and dumped the ball before getting spearheaded by Darian Stewart. This was one of the most dirtiest hits you'll ever see on a quarterback. Cam was clearly defenseless and was in pure agony on the ground as he was rolling after the play. But to top it all off, Cam was flagged for intentional grounding and Stewart's roughing the passer penalty was offset and went unscathed. In any event, Cam still toughened it out and gave his team a shot to win the game after hitting Kelvin Benjamin and Ted Ginn Jr., which set up a 50-yard field goal for Graham Gano. But unfortunately, the kicker hooked the ball, failing to convert, which gave the home team the win. And with that, the game was over and Carolina lost in a bitter ending. But what transpired after the game began to spark a frenzy around the media.
That NFL officials decided last night, setting the tone and a precedent, you could take shots at Cam, and Cam is so big and so strong, they just sort of allow it.
If you're the Denver Broncos, that's the way you play defense. You come in there, and if this quarterback is as physical as he is, you hit him until he gets tired of being hit.
But I'm talking about specifically within the pocket. There is no reason on God's green earth why they got away with putting those hits that they put on Cam Newton last night. And there should be extensive fines how he was not examined for concussion protocol throughout the game. Even though he was talking and all of that stuff, I don't want to hear it. There's something wrong with this picture, and the Carolina Panthers were right to bring it up.
The egregious hits Cam Newton suffered at the hands of the Broncos defense were discussed on every morning sports debate show as it displayed how NFL officials failed to protect one of its biggest stars. Cam was hit 4 times on the helmet, 2 of them being straight up targeting, but officials only flagged the last roughing the passer call on Darian Stewart. Now imagine if that were Tom Brady or Aaron Rodgers on the receiving end of that hit. Heck, we've even seen Tom freak out for even less, but it does beg the question if Cam Newton does get refereed differently than any other quarterback around the league. Standing 6'5" and 250 pounds, the Panthers QB does play a physical brand of football and gets outside of the pocket a lot. But in the end, that should not change how he should be refereed compared to other QBs. If they're getting the calls for roughing the passer, Cam should also see those same calls. And ultimately, this is one of the main reasons we've seen Cam Newton decline in recent years. These hits lead to a lot of injuries and a lot of wear and tear on a quarterback's body. And while only 32 years of age, Cam's body is probably closer to that of a 50-year-old in terms of all the physical abuse he's taken. Meanwhile, Tom Brady, who's managed to prolong his NFL career well into his mid-40s, hasn't taken as many hits, mainly due to getting rid of the ball quicker than others and being afforded the luxury of protection from officials. And if you don't believe me, you could hear it from Shannon Sharpe on Undisputed.
Right? If Darren Stewart had hit Tom Brady or Aaron Rodgers like he hit Cam Newton, oh, he's blackballed for 2 years. He can't play for 2 years. If he hit Tom Brady in his head or Aaron Rodgers like that, oh, he got to get out of the game.
So that being said, currently right now, Cam Newton is in his second stint in Carolina, and after some brief initial success, his return hasn't really panned out. He's shown glimpses of his former MVP self, but hasn't been able to consistently play at a high level or show improvements in his passing game. And honestly, I don't know what happened to Cam Newton's career after the 2021 season. I don't see another team signing him as a starting QB, and for Cam to go to a backup role just doesn't make sense, and it's not something fans or myself want to see.